Okay, hello again, and welcome to the second video in this series on the ER101 and the ER102 from orthogonal devices. And I've been really pleased with the reception that the first videos had. I'm over the moon about it. So I'm really looking forward to carrying on with this series and taking into account the feedback and everything. So along that lines, I'm hoping that my audio situation is going to be a bit better this time. And there's a few other things we're changing. And again, sorry that last time the patch cables were over the display. So now hopefully all of this is visible with these down here. And I've had a few comments on the first video. Some of people have been saying, thank you for starting at the beginning and doing such simple stuff because, all the stuff they've seen has assumed some familiarity. So that's good. And I've also had plenty of requests saying, really looking forward to getting into the advanced stuff because a lot of the basics have been covered elsewhere. So I definitely do want to get into advanced stuff, and I'm really looking forward to that. But I think we really need a firm basis before we can do that. So I want to go over the basics, be absolutely clear, and then move on to the complicated stuff so we can build on that foundation. So if you already know all the basic stuff and you sort of want to skip the videos until I'm on more at the advanced stuff, what I'm going to be doing is at the beginning of each one, so talking about what I'm going to talk about today on the current video and what we're going to look at next. So for this one, we're going to go over the building sequences on the basic display and a few of the functions that help with that. And you may not know all of those, so there's a few I didn't know, I have to admit. So there's that. And then next time we'll be talking about the actual index tables, which are easy to sort of not realize just how useful those can be. But that's for next time. Of course, I could give you like a whole plan of all my videos, but then I might want to change it. I might get more suggestions and so on. So I'll try and stick with this, like what we're talking about today and what we're probably talking about in the next video. But we might change our minds completely, and I might go, let's do something completely different. So apologies if I don't do exactly what I'm going to say, or don't do exactly. Yes, that's what I said. Okay, so am I going to sneeze? Don't think so. All right, we're good. So let's just get our bearings on the absolute basics of how to use the sequencer. Sorry. Right. Okay, we're there. I can speak. It's fine. So as I said last time, with the sequence you've got 4 tracks, and those play simultaneously. Just I guess most of you guys know this, but just in case you didn't. So you've got stuff coming out of each one simultaneously. I've only wired up 2 here. So this black cable is the clock coming in to actually time everything. And then these 3 are for track 1. That's a CV value, CVA, which will be the pitch, a CVB value, which is in this case something else. And in fact, I've hooked that up to my filter cutoff frequency and the envelope decay. And the reason I've done that might become a bit clearer later. And then finally, this red one is the gate, which is either on or off. Again, this is basics. I'm sure you guys know this, but and then for the second one, I've just got the gate, so we use this one to fire a drum, and it is fantastic for sequencing drums. So before we go any further, let's talk about this clock. So the clock I've got coming into it at the moment is a 24 ppqn clock, and that means 24 pulses per quarter note. But the device itself doesn't make any judgments about the musical length of each step. So the fact that this is has a definition of the quarter note is only relevant to my other gear, and it's synced to my drums. So you can hear my drums, and this clock is going 24 ppqn with respect to the drums. But we could have anything in this clock. You know, so like it's if I turn the speed of the clock down, you see the little rotating thing slow down. So this is a much slower clock. I'm only giving it 4 pulses where before I was giving it 24. So speed that back up. And the reason that's relevant is that the duration value on the step is how many clocks that step is going to take. We'll, you know, I'm skipping ahead of myself a little bit there, but that's important. So, like, if you run the clock really slowly, it's easy to, you know, deal in small values of this. Sorry. Oh dear. Terrible. Should have brought some water up here next time. Yeah, so you could have that very slow clock and low duration values for your steps and get like the same sequence to a much faster clock and higher values here. And there are easy ways to switch between those with the math function that we saw a bit of last time. I'm not going to be talking much about maths today, probably, unless the fancy takes me, because I think we should have a whole nother video exploring exactly how that works and what you can do with it, and the best ways of getting stuff out of it. Yeah. Okay, so now we're happy with the clock to an extent, and we'll mention that again later when this other stuff with the timing comes up. So now we want to know how a sequence is built up, because this has no like overall visual thing that tells you the sequence. So let's just recap on how the interface works. You have a focus, which is these little LEDs. See that I've focused pattern on that side and CVA on that side. And the one which is focused is controlled by the encoder on that side. So here I'm modifying the CV value. Here I'm changing the pattern, or now the step. And Brian's designed this very well so that, you know, your hands aren't covering up what you're doing with the two controls, and it's easy to go, you know, change, 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 like this. And that design is also goes on to when you add the expander, which is connected underneath, if you didn't realize. So, you know, when you focus something over here, your hands aren't covering the parts of the display that you're using. So that's very well designed. We're not going to cover anything with this today, but so we know. And furthermore to that focus model, the step you have displaying here is then its information is shown on this side. So it's a little bit like those, you know, like an app that has a sidebar that shows, you know, maybe names or something, or tracks, and when you click on one you then see its information on the other side. So we're looking at step 3 here, so we get the information for the properties of step 3 here. So what are those properties? Well, as we mentioned, there's 2 CV values, and then there's the gate, and so these two control that. The CV values, the actual number you see there, is not the CV value itself, but it's the index into the table. Now this is a slightly confusing thing at first, but the way it works is, instead of setting an actual voltage here, you set this number that tells you where to go and look up in this table of voltages. And the default table of voltages for CVA is the 12-tone Western scale, and this display here helps you know what that means. So like 26 doesn't really mean anything, but this display is telling me that's D2, and you know, so the C2 is going to be 2 volts away from 0 volts, because it's 1 volt per octave, and you can change these in C. So that's A sharp or B flat, because those things are the same voltage in the 12-tone scale. It doesn't understand you know, enharmonics in music theory, so you have to, you know that that's also B flat. But that's not difficult. You know, start with B, turn it down once, B flat, A sharp, same value. If you switch this focus to CVB, you might think that this would show you that, but it doesn't. So this is initially something that can be confusing. So and also if you're trying this along with me, this might not be displaying that at all, and you might be like, it's not doing the same thing, what's going wrong? So this switch, which is mysteriously marked table, is for switching between the two available tables, one for CVA, one for CVB. So with that switch up, we're seeing this value, and with it down, we're seeing this one. And you'll notice that this isn't displaying the note value, because CVB is by default not considered to be a pitch, so we're using a different table here. So that's what's going on there. Now, of course, you can change that, but we won't talk about that right now. As I say, we'll talk about tables either next video or soon in the future. This middle position is where you get hold of the inbuilt tables, the reference tables. Again, some more for later. So flip it up to see CVA values and down for CVB values. All right. So let's start off with a new track and pattern. And so to do that, to go to a blank slate, we're going to load the empty snapshot. So the snapshots store everything in all 4 tracks. And if you go and load this blank snapshot, hit load, it gives you a chance to quit, or if you press it again, we've loaded it. So for the 4 tracks we can go through on this one, but they're all empty at the moment. And the way it's broken down is a track contains patterns and a pattern contains steps. I think I said that last time. But there's a potential confusion there as well. Indeed, when I started with this, I assumed that, like, say we make pattern 1 and pattern 2, that we might be able to do something like, I want to play pattern 1 4 times and then pattern 2 twice or something like that. And that is not how it works. The patterns are always played sequentially. So if we have pattern 1, pattern 2, and they both have, so let's give this one 4 steps, and this one 2 steps, and then I'll flip it down to the follow mode so we can see it play and unpause it. And nothing happened. Nothing happened because I didn't give any of the steps a duration. Again, another gotcha. So because we're on this first step and it has duration 0, then it's not moving. In fact, let's delete that and do it again. So yeah, as you can see, I'm using these controls, insert and delete, to manipulate these, and you can also copy and paste them. And then there's the math button, which again we'll get to in the future. So insert for a new pattern in track 1, and I need to be in edit mode. I skipped over this again. So these are the viewing modes. Edit for editing it, makes sense. Follow for seeing it change, and you don't get to do as many edit things when you're in that mode, or some do work. And hold is where you can make edits without it immediately happening, and you hit commit to make it happen. So adding things, we want to be in edit mode. Now when I hit insert, we get a pattern, pattern 1. Let's add a step. There we go. I think I hit that twice by mistake. Yeah, look, we've got 2 steps, so let's delete that one. So step 1, let's give that a duration of 24, so that's a quarter note, and we'll give it, keep hitting the buttons twice. Now we can hear a note. So we'll insert some more steps. Step 2, turn up the pitch. Step 3, and we get a little scale. And in fact, I'm going to turn down these values because, as I say, I've sent that to the envelope decay as well as the filter cutoff. So it goes bomb, bomb, bomb sequence with 3 steps. So say we want to see what's happening, flip down to follow mode, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And this is all pattern 1. If we add another pattern, it will happen after this one. So let's insert pattern 2, nothing in it, put in a step. See, we've got these default values again. Not hearing it because it doesn't have a duration. Let's make this one shorter. Let's have 12, a bit easier. Sounds like a rest, right? Because this gate isn't turned up. So it's time to explain these two. The duration of the step is how long that step is playing with reference to the clock. So this one is 12. This clock has to click 12 times to end this single step. But the gate value is how long the gate output is held high throughout that duration. So think of that a bit more simply. You know, let's just pause it. If you have, you know, you play some notes, so you play some notes on a piano, you can hold down the notes for longer or shorter and still play it in the same speed. So you could go ba 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 or ba 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 ba, and you haven't changed like the amount of space, like amount of time between the notes, but you have changed how long they're down for. So that's what the gate is. So on this pattern 2, this plays when the clock reaches the beginning of the pattern, the gate comes high, there's another tick, and then on the next one, the gate goes back down to 0, but we don't finish the step until we do the next 10 clicks of the fairly fast clock, and then we're on to the next step. So that's what the gate means. The point I was missed, which I go back slightly to, is that the patterns play after each other. So let's unpause again and go into the follow mode. We'll play pattern 1, then pattern 2. Pattern 2 is very short. Let's make it longer. Let's add a whole load more steps, right? Every time you hit insert, it copies the step you're on. Let's turn that down a bit. So pattern 2 is this same note 6 times. And those are at half the duration, but all of these gates are 2. So a feature we haven't mentioned yet are these loop start and ends. And they're pretty self-explanatory, really. Say we want it to go from the very first step here, step 1, but only play 2 steps, and we want to ignore the rest of the sequence for now. Put the start there, and the end there, and when it gets around, well, we're just looping these 2. And this is quite useful for editing your sequence to get exactly what you want, especially involving the patterns. And when I was saying, you know, the patterns play sequentially, you may have been thinking, well, what's the point of them then? And you can think of them like bars, but of course they can be any length. When I say bar, I mean measure, not the drink. I mean, you could think about it like that if you want. Maybe I will. But yeah, like measures. Or you can just think of them as like useful breakups of your notes that you can copy and paste and manipulate independently. So for example, say I just wanted to hear pattern 1. I could go over here, hit these loops, and we're just looping pattern 1. Now I want to hear pattern 2. Now we're just hearing pattern 2. But these can be on any step. And when it's the whole pattern, and when you've got pattern focused, you see them full like that. But if you take say we take step 2 as the start, doesn't change in this case, but now that's flashing. It doesn't change because they're all the same note. In fact, that's a bit boring and repetitive, isn't it? So let's click those off. Not that this is much better, but there we go. So let's do copy and paste as I just mentioned it. So let's focus pattern there. And you notice when you flick through the patterns, it actually takes 2 turns of the encoder. So we start at the beginning of pattern 1, and then it goes to the end of pattern 1. Beginning of pattern 2, end of pattern 2. But it's still pattern 2 focused there. So we can, in fact, let's copy pattern 1. Copy. And then if we go pattern 2 and hit insert, it will copy that after pattern 2. And it remains in the clipboard until you hit copy again. So now we've got our pattern 3. Let's edit it a little bit so we can hear the difference. Why don't we make it that's not very musical, is it? There we go. And we can go and copy pattern 2. Copy. We want to put it in after 3. Let's edit a couple of these again so we know it's different. So this has all been on track 1. Let's go over and do something on track 2. The reason that's flashing is because we could in fact paste this pattern in track 2. So why don't we do that? Why not? So this gate's going to that drum you can hear. And now these CVA and CVB aren't going to do anything because not plugged in. Now, something you can do with the gate here is if we turn it down to 0, that step doesn't play. So that's a quick way of getting some rhythms. As I mentioned in the last video, you can also swing the duration between steps. So if I just change this, then the length of this one step would change, and we'd probably get it out of time. But let's go back to step 1, and if we hold that down, this will have increased, but this next one will have gone down. And because I've left this copy here, it's done it on this side as well. No, it hasn't. That's just our imagination there. God, that really sounded like it, didn't it? Amazing. Anyway, good habit to turn that off once you're done with it. Otherwise you end up getting confused, even though we were fine. So let's say we're happy with our work here and we want to save what's in track 1 and in what's track 2. This is where the snapshots come in. So I can go to a snapshot, and the ones with the little dots already have data, and the ones without are fresh. If you don't have the ER102, you won't have as many of these, you'll just have 16, whereas when you add this on, you get a lot more and they have letters. Now I'm on to overwrite what I've got in A2 here, so it's easier sitting save. I think I hit it twice, because normally you'd have to, yeah. I do seem to be hitting these twice. I wonder whether, I don't know. Anyway, you see it saying card up there. That means it's writing to the card, and that can sometimes cause it to get slightly out of sync, but loading would never do that. Loading's very fast, so that's very useful, because in performance you might want to just go and load number 1, load that to abort, or this to carry on with it. And this is my sequence that wasn't really designed for these sounds, so let's go back to the one we just had. Easy. And if we make some changes now and we don't like them, we could always load that again. Oh, let's turn that off, because that's getting a bit ridiculous. So whilst we're talking about the snapshots loading, something that's very useful to know is in the hold mode, the commit button happens in a quantized sense. And what that means, it doesn't happen until you get to the end of whatever you have selected here, and that works for the snapshot loading as well. So I'll unpause it and we can listen to the horribly unmusical stuff again. And we'll click up into hold mode. And we'll focus track here. Let's go to A1 first. Right. And we're going to load this. But we don't hear it yet, because we won't hear it until we hit commit. Ah, it happens straight away. Do you have to hold it down? Perhaps I got this wrong. Oh dear. Load. There we go, you hold it down, that's better. And when we get to the end of this, what you're seeing here is the track options, which happens if you hit that a second time. I'm not fully convinced I've got that quite right. I thought that's how it worked. Let's try it again. So we'll load this one. We're in the hold mode. Load. I think it is. I think that did work. We'll have a better example for that later. Yeah, sorry to not be 100% clear on that one. All right, let's load the empty snapshots. Ah, look, there you go. It's working. We got to the end, so I was right. I should have more faith in myself. So there we are. Righty. So that's almost all of what I want to talk about today. Wow, this is actually longer than I expected it to be. But I just want to talk about a couple of little clever things you can do here whilst doing these. So let's insert a pattern. Let's have some steps. Let's make these 24 again. And let's make that a bit longer. So because this is longer, let's turn that down. No envelope. Ah, we're getting to the envelope, promise you. So with this very short, we hear a very short note. Longer note. But even with this short, if I turn this up, we hear it for longer because I have it patched to the envelope length. And the reason I've done that is because I want to explain before we stop this smoothing button. So I'm going to add a couple of extra steps for this. We've got step here, 1, 2, and I'm going to go back to 2 and make it an octave higher with the wrong hand. Now, what the smoothing does is it does like portamento, as you would expect, and it can be applied to individual steps or a whole pattern, so that's provided to the whole pattern. Sorry, my alarm went off there. Terrible. Yeah, so it's what you're hearing here might not be quite what you'd have expected. You'd expected a nice smooth, especially if we make these longer. Let's go up to 48. Now, if I open my VCA a little bit, that's more like what you'd expect, right? So now you're hearing the smoothing even when the gate is closed. But let's just examine something here. If we go to 1 and make this much longer, you see, it seems to stay on for longer. And this is sort of behavior that I didn't expect with this. So what happens is, as it goes through, it keeps the pitch in the same place for the whole length of the gate, and it does the smoothing after the gate goes low. So if I close the VCA again, we're not really hearing much of the smoothing. And that's why I connected this to the envelope. So by making that longer, we hear that one smooth, as well as hearing the filter open a bit. So that's smoothing. And there's something else we can do here. So if I go to 3 and turn smoothing, turn it off on the pattern. And only have it on these two. So that's smoothing. Something else we can do is ratcheting, which you do by hitting, you focus this gate and you hit it again. And what happens now is it pulses the gate in these time divisions. So this whole thing is 48, so if I turn this up to 24, we get 2 of them. And if I turn it down, we should get more. Bar. And you see, this is a funny value, so we get like a different rhythm. So this is really useful for, you know, sort of offbeat rhythms and things like that, and dubby kind of rhythms. And if you turn it right down, they're so fast, and if we give it a little bit of an envelope and smooth it, so you can play around with that to get different effects. Turn that down. And we're hearing the different gates now. And that's really fast, a bit slower. And then with some envelope, it's going to smooth them together. So hopefully all that wasn't too complicated and I didn't lose you at any point. Let's just briefly go over what we covered again. We know the tracks play simultaneously, so we can go to track 2 here and get a different sound. You don't have to do that in 2 steps, by the way. Now we've got my drum. We learned that the duration and the clock are linked, so if you had a much slower clock, you can have lower values here. Let's turn turn it off. We learnt about the focus, the CVA and the CVB, how to see the two different values, and we learnt copy and paste with insert. There's one thing I didn't go over when you're doing the insert, and it works whether you're doing copy or not, is if you hold it down, you see this thing up here says after, and you can actually go before, or you can split at the current position, or halfway usually, if it's a note. Or so that split is very useful if you want to break a pattern up in the middle, or break a note in half. These are very useful things. And then after is the default one, but you can also go before. Yeah, we looked at the smoothing and the ratcheting. I think we maybe go over that again in case that I wasn't very clear there, but this has definitely gone on long enough for now. And we learnt that the patterns play one after the other, but they're useful units for copying and pasting and so on and so forth. This button here just turns it on and off. That wasn't absolutely clear. That's a reset button that takes all the tracks back to 0. Also, if it wasn't obvious, the tracks can play out of time with each other, and the loops can be different lengths, and they get out of time, and that's fine. That's expected and useful. We also learnt about these loops, which are useful for pinning down the specific bit you want to edit whilst it's playing. And another trick you can do there is you can put it in follow mode and find the step that you're interested in whilst it's paused, and again just open your VCA a bit so you can edit here whilst you're paused. So that's a good way of finding the note you want to edit, and so is using the loops whilst it's playing. So close that again. So I hope that's made things absolutely crystal clear here. And next time we'll have a look at what the tables are and how they work and what you can do with them. And then in the future we'll get on to some of the exciting things you can do over here. So I hope you're still enjoying the series. Hope this one wasn't too long. And sorry for the mistakes in the middle and everything. And I'll look forward to seeing you all again soon. All right. Cheerio.